Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are cutting straight through the noise and getting into something we all go through, the way we talk about being sick.
It's a really fascinating topic because, unlike most conversations, health talk is, it's highly structured. We're working today from just one source, a simple four-scene dialogue.
Right. It involves three characters: Anna, who's the patient, her coworker Mark, and Dr. Lewis.
And our mission here is to really extract the blueprint from this. We want to find the vocabulary, the conversational rules, and the social norms for everything from reporting you're sick to getting support.
And this dialogue is perfect for that. It follows Anna right from the start of a cold all the way to her recovery. What's so striking is how smoothly it all goes. It's like a script.
It's absolutely a script. It's less a casual chat and more like a required performance, for Anna to go from being a regular employee to a patient who needs rest. She has to hit these specific verbal cues.
And those cues trigger very specific responses from everyone else.
Exactly. So let's unpack that sequence for you step by step.
Okay, let's do it. So phase 1, recognizing and reporting symptoms. This is scene 1 at the office. Mark starts with a simple good morning, but he pivots almost immediately. He says, "You don't look so good today. Are you okay?"
In that line, that question, it isn't just him being nice. It's a critical linguistic door. In an office, the default is, you're supposed to be fine, right? You're competent, you're healthy.
Sure.
Mark's observation basically gives Anna permission to drop that pretense. It lets her step into the role of someone who needs help. It kicks off the whole social contract.
That's a great way to put it. And once that door's open, Anna doesn't just say, "Oh, I feel sick." She gives a little bit of history, a bit of gravity. She says, "Honestly, I don't feel well. I've been feeling sick since last night."
Right. And the way she lists her symptoms after that is so important. It's what moves the whole situation forward. She goes from these general subjective feelings to details that really signal that this is serious and needs action.
So walk us through that sequence. What are the specific details she gives him?
Okay, so she starts with the immediate painful stuff. A headache, a sore throat, and feeling very tired. But then, and this is crucial, she adds details about how it's affecting her core functions.
You mean her sleep?
Exactly, her sleep. She says she kept coughing during the night, which made her wake up many times. That gives Mark a way to measure the impact. It's not just a complaint anymore, it's data.
It's an actionable report. And that's when Mark brings up the one objective sign they can talk about.
Oh.
A fever. He asks her directly.
Yeah, and she confirms it, not with a number, but with her physical state. She feels hot and weak. That little package of words, hot and weak, confirms the severity and it dictates the next step.
And Mark's response is fascinating. He doesn't play doctor. He just executes the social protocol.
He does. His instruction is immediate and non-negotiable. You should go home and rest.
But I think the most important part, at least for the workplace, is the logistical cover he provides. He actually says, "I can tell the team you're not feeling well. Your health is more important."
Yes, that one sentence is huge. It completely reframes her absence. She's not just a missing employee, she's an employee under care. It lifts a massive burden off her.
And Anna's response seals the deal, the gratitude. "Thank you, Mark. That's really kind of you."
It's required. If she skipped that, the whole interaction would feel off. So that completes phase 1. She's reported her symptoms clearly, and she's secured support.
So with that social permission slip signed, she moves to the next necessary step, the professional confirmation. We're in scene 2 at the clinic.
And the whole dynamic shifts. We're moving from a supportive friend to Dr. Lewis, the medical authority. And notice how Anna has already refined her report.
Oh yeah, it's much tighter.
When the doctor asks what seems to be the problem today, she gives him this super concise, structured summary. I have a headache, a sore throat, and a cough.
No more backstory about not sleeping, just the clinical highlights and then the timeline. Since yesterday evening, it got worse this morning.
This really linear, clean structure lets the doctor just get straight to the diagnosis. He does the checks, takes her temperature, which shows a mild fever, and looks at her throat. He notes it's a little red, but nothing too serious.
And this is where the language itself becomes a kind of medicine. The diagnosis is just a common cold. And you see Anna's reaction is instant relief.
It is. She says, "Oh, that's good to hear. I was worried it might be something serious."
And that's the core insight here, isn't it? The doctor's role isn't just clinical. It's about linguistic de-escalation.
100%. By giving it a name, a common cold, and using these qualifiers like mild and nothing too serious, the entire story changes. It goes from a scary unknown to a predictable recovery plan. The worry just kind of evaporates once certainty shows up.
So that diagnosis is the catalyst. Once you have certainty, you can move to instructions.
Yeah.
And they have to be really clear.
And they are. Dr. Lewis lays it all out. What she needs: rest, warm drinks, and medicine. Then he gets specific about the medicine, one for the fever, one for the cough.
And the instructions are so practical. Take the medicine 2 times a day and drink plenty of water. It's a simple to-do list.
And the final 2 pieces of that clinical chat are about setting expectations and providing a safety net. He gives a timeline. Most people feel better in 2 or 3 days.
Right. And the all-important warning: if your symptoms get worse, come back to see me, so she doesn't fall through the cracks. The professional part is done.
Okay, so with the clinical plan locked in, we enter the final stage, maintenance. This is phase 3, support, recovery, and gratitude. We're back to Mark.
Yes, in scene 3, he calls to check in on her. And this isn't just a friendly call, is it? It feels necessary to validate the whole process.
It is. He first confirms the diagnosis. The doctor said it's only a cold, which reinforces the certainty, and then he checks for compliance. Are you resting now?
And Anna gives him proof. She describes her setting in detail. She's on the sofa with a blanket and some tea. She's not just resting, she's performing the act of recovery.
But then Mark takes the social support to a whole new level. He says, if you need anything, food, medicine, anything, just tell me.
That's a massive offer. I mean, it's huge.
It's a massive offer, and it's framed by that reciprocal gratitude. Anna immediately says, you're very helpful. Thank you so much. The entire thing is this exchange of support for gratitude.
Can I push back on that for a second?
Yeah.
That offer, if you need anything, does that feel real? Or is it more of a mandatory social phrase you have to say, even if you both know she's never going to call in to pick up soup?
That's a really important question. I think in these kinds of scripted social interactions, sincerity can be less important than function. The phrase itself is a verbal marker. It says, I see how serious this is, and I would, in theory, stop my life to help you.
So it's about establishing the potential for support, even if it's not used.
Exactly. It solidifies their friendship by setting this high watermark for what he'd be willing to do. It's like a linguistic guarantee.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So fast forward 2 days to scene 4. We see the payoff. The language is totally different. It's all about success now.
The contrast is so clear. Anna says she feels much better now. And notice, she specifically gives credit to the plan. The medicine helped a lot. She's confirming that the doctor's instructions worked.
And she gives proof again. The coughing is just a little now, but the ultimate sign of recovery, and this links all the way back to her first complaint.
Her sleep.
Her sleep. I finally slept well last night. The core function is restored.
And then the whole story wraps up by closing that social contracts loop. Anna says, Mark, thanks again for helping me.
And he delivers the perfect closing line, reinforcing their whole relationship. Anytime, Anna. That's what friends are for. It just confirms everything they've both done was expected and essential.
It's just an incredible blueprint. From what seems like a very simple dialogue, we've pulled out this whole 4-step framework for how we manage sickness in our lives.
Okay, so to sum it all up for you, first, you initiate with concern, giving the person permission to be sick. Second, the patient has to report their symptoms, clearly and in sequence.
Right. Then third, you get that professional confirmation, which establishes certainty and gives you clear instructions: rest, medicine, water.
And finally, that social contract is maintained through check-ins and closed out with gratitude.
What's so interesting is that the whole process, from her worrying at her desk to resting on her sofa, it all hinges on the doctor's ability to communicate certainty. The diagnosis of a common cold just instantly changes Anna's entire focus.
The language isn't just describing her condition, it's prescribing her state of mind. It turns this big, scary fear into a simple 2-day action plan.
It really does.
And that raises a really powerful final thought for you to consider. How much of getting better, especially from something common, is less about the medicine itself and more about the psychological relief that comes from simple professional language that takes the fear of the unknown and turns it into the manageable, labeled task of just following instructions?
Hey there, and welcome. In this explainer, we're going to talk about something that happens to all of us, right? You're feeling sick, and you just don't have the right words in English to explain it. Well, today, we're going to fix that. We'll follow a really simple story to learn all the key phrases you'll need. Let's jump right in. So let's just think about it. You wake up, you're not feeling so great. What's the first thing you say in English? Knowing these words can make a huge difference, whether you're talking to your boss, your family, or even a doctor. It just makes a stressful time a little bit easier. To make this super practical, we're going to follow the story of a woman named Anna. As you can see, she's having a bit of a bad day. But you know what? Her rough day is gonna be our lesson. It's the perfect way to see how these phrases are used in, a real-life situation. All right, section 1. Our story kicks off at Anna's office. This is so often the first place you have to explain that you're not feeling 100%, so it's the perfect spot to start. Let's see how Anna handles it. So her coworker, Mark, he notices right away that something's off. And listen to how he says it. "You don't look so good." That is such a common and polite way to show you're concerned without being, too nosy. And here we go. Our first key phrase from Anna. "I don't feel well." It's simple, it's direct, everyone understands it. She also adds, "I've been feeling sick," which is great because it tells Mark when it all started. These are two fantastic phrases to have in your back pocket. Okay, so you've said you're sick. The next question is almost always, "Oh no, what's wrong?" So this next part is all about the words you need to describe exactly what you're feeling. Let's listen to Anna. Anna starts with a classic, "I have a headache." Now pay attention to that structure. I have a, and then you just add the symptom. It's a really simple formula, but man, is it powerful. You can use it for so many different problems. And what's a headache? Well, it's pretty much what it sounds like, right? Any kind of pain in your head. It's a super common feeling, so it's a great word to know. Next, she says, "My throat hurts." This is another really useful way to describe symptoms. You can just point to a part of your body and say, "It hurts." We also call this a sore throat. Honestly, both phrases work perfectly fine. And then she mentions coughing. You know that sound you make when your chest is all tight or your throat is scratchy? That's a cough. By saying she kept coughing, she's explaining it was a problem all night long, probably keeping her awake. This slide is perfect. It's basically a little cheat sheet for the most common cold symptoms. You've got the headache, sore throat, and cough we just talked about, plus feeling hot, which is a fever, and just feeling tired and weak. This is your go-to vocabulary list for sure. So, Anna makes the smart move to leave work and see a doctor. Now, I know this can be a really intimidating situation when you're learning a new language, but don't worry, we can break it down into a really simple, predictable process. A trip to the clinic almost always follows these 4 steps. First, you explain your symptoms. Then, the doctor examines you. After that, you get a diagnosis. That's just the doctor's name for what's wrong. And finally, you get instructions on how to get better. See, when you lay it out like this, it feels way more manageable. I love this slide because it shows the different ways you and a doctor might talk. You might say, "I feel hot," and the doctor will use a more medical term, like "you have a mild fever." Mild just means it's not a super high or serious fever. It's a great example of how your simple words get translated. And there it is, the diagnosis. Dr. Lewis tells Anna she has a common cold. And you know what? That's actually pretty good news. When you hear common cold, it means it's a totally normal illness that tons of people get. It's definitely not considered dangerous. All right, so Anna knows what's wrong. Now what? Well, this next section is all about the language of advice, what the doctor and even your friends might tell you to do to feel better. These instructions are super typical. Let's break them down. Take the medicine 2 times a day is a clear, simple schedule. And drink plenty of water just means drink a lot of it. Plenty of is a great natural-sounding phrase for a large amount. Here's a great little summary of all the good advice Anna got from her doctor and her coworker Mark. The main things are, get lots of rest, stay hydrated with water or warm drinks, take your medicine, and try to get to bed early. And let's not forget Mark's kind offer to ask for help if she needs it. That's good advice too. And now for the best part of the story, getting better. After a couple of days of taking it easy, Anna is finally starting to feel like herself again. This timeline really sums up the whole experience, doesn't it? Symptoms start one night, she sees the doctor the next morning, and just 2 days later, boom, she's feeling much better. It just goes to show you that a common cold usually passes pretty quickly if you take care of yourself. And this is the phrase we all want to say, right? I feel much better now. It's the perfect, positive way to let people know you're back on your feet. She also adds that the medicine helped a lot, which is a great way to talk about what worked for you. So we've gone on Anna's whole journey with her, from feeling sick to getting better. We've learned how to say you're not well, how to describe your symptoms, what to expect at the doctor's, and how to say you've recovered. So my final question to you is this. which of these great phrases do you think you'll use first? Thinking about it now is the best way to make sure you remember it when you really need it.